Brahms is bringing the heat. Introducing Brahms' new spicy chicken sandwiches. Flavor this good just can't be beat. Brahms' crispy, tender, spicy chicken delivers just enough kick to ramp up our original recipe. Get it regular or club style with crispy bacon and American cheese. Add on Brahms sauce for that extra burst of heat, and you have spicy chicken sandwich perfection. Because nothing is better than Brahms.
It's time for the Skordle Pay Dirt Pick'em Show, presented by Maples, Nix, and Dieselhorst Attorneys at Law. We put it out there, the teams, the stats, the opinions, the picks, and most importantly, where to stop for dinner on the way to the game. Let's get to it. Here's your host, Andy Campbell.
Well, hello and welcome, football fans, to the Skordle Pay Dirt Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Dieselhorst Law Firm. It is playoff time in Oklahoma. I'm looking forward to breaking down some quarterfinal games with this panel of experts. We have Mark Rogers and Tom Nelson, the voices of Skordle. We'll be calling Fairview at Rejoice Christian. We'll talk about that game here in just a little bit. We have Coach Jay Mendenhall from Oklahoma Bible Academy back. We had Jay on last week. And our next special guest, Coach Jeff Craig of Blanchard. And Coach Craig, obviously not the ending that you were hoping for your season, but incredible year last year with the Gold Ball win for your program. Talk about your season and what's to come in 2025 for your team.
Yeah, it was tremendous season. I mean, really as bad as we feel this week, and no disrespect to everybody, I'm not really wish I wasn't here, but it was a tough road. The 4As is loaded, so it was going to be a tough road anyway. It was a tough first round game for us. It's going to be a brutal second round, a brutal semifinals, and a brutal finals. So just a tough road, but a lot of losing some really good kids and losing some really good players, but good people at the same time. Be hard to replace. But we'll be a little bit young next year, and we'll kind of have a youth explosion. But those guys have been trained well by the guys that are graduating now, and hopefully with that on their plate, they can step up and make some things happen. It'll be a learning process for us and a growing process. So we might take a few bumps here or there, but we'll make as much noise as possible with a good crew coming in.
Coach, we love having you on the show. Wish it was later in December, but certainly love having you here and look forward to your analysis tonight. We're going to discuss actually 9 Skordle Network games this evening on the show, and then we're going to do a quick rundown of the bigger classes from 6A1 on down. So let's go ahead and start with our first pick'em game. Start with a 2A matchup. Washington, obviously the two-time defending champ in that class, had an impressive 42-0 shutout of Perry last Friday. The Warriors will host Kiefer in round 2. Kiefer Trojans are 8-3 on the season, but have won 8 of their last 9 after a 36-13 defeat of Sequoia Talclaw last week. Mark Rogers, kick us off.
Adam and I had Kiefer earlier in the season against Jones. It's a young team that's gotten a lot better. And they tested themselves in the non-district. But Washington, two-time defending champs, they're on a long winning streak, 41 games right now. Creed Barrett, their freshman quarterback, he threw 5 touchdown passes last week on 9 attempts. So Hudson Howard is a really good running back. This Washington team is loaded. They may have some problems going forward in the next couple of rounds, but I like them to win this week.
Tom Nelson.
And no matter what happens in this one, you can't fault Kiefer's schedule. They've taken on all comers. Their 3 losses are to Vian, Kingston, and Jones, a combined 30-3 this season. So now they get Washington, and like Mark said, 41 straight wins. They can tie Ada for the 3rd longest streak in state history, and I say they will. They're going to get the win.
Coach Mendenhall.
You guys are full of stats. I don't got any of those stats, but I'm picking Washington. I have them, actually, if I could rewind last week, I had them runner up to Millwood in the finals. I think I'm flipping it, and I think Washington's going to win it, and obviously I think they're going to win this week.
Yeah, Millwood with a surprisingly close game through 3 quarters against Crossing Christians last week, and they were able to pull that out late there in the 4th quarter. Coach Craig, I know you haven't watched a whole lot of 2A and 8-man football film this year, but let's go ahead and go to you, Kiefer at Washington.
Yeah, just really having Washington down the road, you get a lot of information about them. You hear a lot about them, and you get to see some of the things. And got some of my buds that played against them, and they're just a force to be reckoned with. And they've won a couple of close games, and they've been challenged, and they've stood the challenge. So I don't think anything changes this week. I know Kiefer's had some success the last couple of years, and had a heartbreaking loss last year, but I just can't go against Washington. They just got too many weapons, and playing really, really well at this time. And like Jay said, probably the leader to win the whole thing. So can't go against Washington.
With all that NIL money that's coming in for those tickets they're writing in Blanchard, they should be able to go get some of those Washington players.
we got to get some players in here. We got to find a way to get players in here. I guess that's the new way to collect money.
Let's drop down to 2A Division II for our next pick'em game. Beggs went on the road last week to Alvin, defeated the Gold Bugs 43-0. Now the Demons travel to Vian to take on the undefeated number 1 Wolverines, who's maybe the gold ball favorite in 2A2. Tom Nelson starts off.
Yeah, I labored over that pick last week. I'm kicking myself for not picking Beggs. Did anybody expect them to go to Alvin and win 43-0? Vian has won 5 of 6 in the series. Beggs won the last meeting back in 2021. Mark's got Vian number 1 in 2A2 for a reason. I'm not going to disagree. Mason Wright's about 2 average games away from 2,000 yards rushing and has 30 touchdowns. I think he's going to get that shot at 2 Bills next week because Vian's going to move on. So,
Mark.
Mason Wright's averaging 14 yards a carry. And so you don't have to be Jeff Craig to figure out there should not be anything other than a 0 in the right-hand column if you've got a guy averaging 14 yards a carry, because that's a first down every time he touches the ball. He's really good. I love Billy Ramsey, the quarterback at Beggs. Ryan Grayson is also a Division I athlete that they have there. Beggs has faced a tougher schedule, going up against Henrietta and Davis and Holdenville. Vian hasn't faced really, I think, an opponent that's as good as those three since Eufaula earlier in the season. But I do like Vian to win this. I think they're still the team to beat in this class, but Beggs is really good. So this should be a good game.
Coach Mendenhall.
14.5 yards a carry is insane. I don't care. I mean, that's Class C. That's insane, right? And 2A football, good 2A football. That's awesome. I picked Vian to win the whole thing, so no surprise that I'm going to pick him to win here. I did pick Beggs last week, but I'm like Tom. I went back and forth over and over before I finally picked him, mainly because of Grayson. I think that's just tough to match up with a D1 athlete in 2A, but I did not see 43 rip coming. So maybe it's closer than what we think, but I'm going with Vian.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, even a guy like me that kind of likes to throw it around is not stupid enough to not hand it to a guy who gets 14 yards to carry. So, yeah, we would be running the rock over there, and we probably would have a 0 over in that right column. But I've got a history from my days back as a Morris Eagle with some Vian and some Wrights. And I got a dose of the Wrights when I was playing Vian when I was in high school, and got throttled around a few times by Beggs as well. So got a history with both of those. And I always know anytime you got a Wright on that Vian team, they've got a chance. And so I'm gonna have to stick with Mark's number 1 pick in Vian. I just think them at home, that they've got this one. But like everybody else said, I expect this to be a really good game and be a fun one to watch.
We typically wait to our games of the week until the very end, but it's a little bit unconventional tonight since we're going from the bigger class and working our way down. So our first game of the week, Squirrel game of the week, this is a school network game of the week, Class A football. Cash and Wildcats were on the road last week and rushed for nearly 400 yards to send Walters to basketball season. Coach Shack's team will now travel to Pawnee to take on the 8-3 Black Bears. Pawnee started the season 0-3 with losses to Woodland, Stroud, and Hominy, and hasn't lost since. So this will be on cashandwildcats.tv with Neiman DeBobby calling this school week. Mark Rogers, Cashin at Pawnee.
Before we go there, I think we need Skordle to sponsor a bowl game, the Brahms Bowl between Morris and Blackwell, two 0-10 teams this year. Jeff's got some connections there. I got some connections in Blackwell. Morris is going to be a favorite, probably 2 touchdowns, but at least somebody goes home happy at that point.
Somebody's got to get a W, don't they?
That's right. It's a good thing for everyone. Big game last week for Jaden Bolton for Cashin. That was a nice win to go on the road and avenge a playoff loss that Cashin had a year ago in that game. Luke Mitchell, Pawnee's quarterback, is really, really good. They've got a bunch of guys that can play, and they really did have one of the toughest non-district schedules in the entire state. So love Shaq. I picked against them last week, so I better stay consistent. I'll go with the Black Bears.
Tom Nelson, you also picked Walters last week. You gonna take the Wildcats here?
I will throw this in here really quickly. We're going to be talking about some Brahms on Friday night. They're going to sponsor the game, of course, but they have got a double mushroom and Swiss bacon cheeseburger. That's their specialty burger this month, and I've had 3 of them in the past week. So that is good stuff. I got to get my Brahms out there. So, yeah, it was impressive the way Cashin was able to put Fairview loss behind them and pull off one of the biggest wins in the state last week at Walters, 42-14, the final crazy. We know it's the postseason. The Wildcats are dangerous. All is right in the world again. But Pawnee is as dangerous as anybody in A1. Talked about they started off 0-3. I mean, they lost to Woodland, Stroud, and Hominy. They're 31-2 combined and still playing. The win over Pawhuska, 62-16. Hammered Tonkawa 52-0. I picked against Cashin last week, and they showed me up, and they're going to have a chance to do it again. I'm going to pick the Black Bears this week. Sorry.
Coach Mendenhall did take the Wildcats last week.
I did.
And he got deked by Coach Shaq too. I mean, it was.
He's really good at poor mouthing, man. I mean, I don't know. There's maybe Coach Kayot is about the only other person I know that's as good at poor mouthing as Coach Shaq. But now, Tom, when you get the mushroom burger, do you also get Brahms sauce for your fries?
Yep, I did that today, as a matter of fact. Yep.
Money.
I love having Brahms as a sponsor because I can talk them up all night long.
Yeah, good stuff. No, I thought it was going to be a close game. I'm seeing Shaq coach a lot of games, and he tends to get he's so good at getting what he wants offensively. Sometimes it's hard to execute. Just depends on how good that other team is. And watching the Walters game, I was really impressed with his kids. I just thought they matched the physicality of a good Walters team who wanted to run right over your face. I know that hurt having Palmer out or get hurt, but I was impressed with Cash, and they had a couple big bodies in there. And I'm going to roll with it. I did it last week, and I everything you said about Pawnee. I mean, I've been watching their scores for a few weeks. They really got my attention with that Pawhuska win. But I also know that running right at Cashin answered the bell last week. I think if you run right at them, they're going to get challenged again. It's just going to come down to they're going to get sick of tackling those guys, or they're going to keep doing it and give their offense a chance to score a few times. So I'm going to roll with Cashin because same style of offense as last week, and they handled it pretty well.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, it was I thought that was a big win for Cashin last week to go down and knock off Walters. And, I think it was Jay was the only one that picked Cashin. Isn't that right? I mean, everybody else went against him, and
thanks, Coach.
He didn't listen to Shaq, badmouth it, and took that advice to go with him. But I think that was a big victory for them. It was a big comeback after losing to Fairview and handily losing to Fairview, but a big win there. But I hate to go against Shaq, but I think Pawnee's on a roll. I think they're just a solid football team, and Cashin might give them a game, but I think Pawnee's going to pull this one out.
Jay on the island again. Let's see how it works out with Cashin and Pawnee. And now our second Skordle game of the week. This will be called by Mark and Tom. Is that correct?
Heading that way.
We have the professionals up in Tulsa. Maybe the best matchup in the state this week, regardless of class. 2-time defending champ Fairview Yellow Jackets advanced to the quarterfinals with a 37-rip shutout of Winning Wood last week. Fairview will go on the road to square off against 10-1 Rejoice Christian, whose only loss in the season was at 3A Cassia Hall a couple of months ago. So Mark, Tom, whoever wants to go first. Tom, you won't be picking the games. Why don't you go first?
All right. Well, everybody in Class A has been looking at this one, and I'm excited to get a chance to see it in person. Rejoice has a wealth of offensive weapons. Cale Marley, a quarterback, who's probably going to be going D1 next year on the defensive side. Noah Goodman, over 1,000 yards rushing. Kid that stuck out at me when I was watching video this week. Camleon Nero's a freshman, going to be really, really good for them. Good offensive line, sets the tone. They're going to spread the field and push tempo, which will put a lot of pressure on a Jacket defense that hasn't been as dominant this year. Jax Bernard's going to have to be on point, finding Easton Hamer and Hayden Miller downfield, and Alex Houck and Grant Church are going to have to produce the kind of numbers on the ground as they did against Cashin when Fairview rushed for almost 400 yards. I don't want to make a pick in this one, but I did pick Fairview to win the gold ball, so I guess in a way I did. So,
Mark Rogers.
All right, I got a text from Hunter Shepard, and he set the over-under on this game at 100. So you got Cale Marley and you got Jax Bernard, two great quarterbacks. And if you look at Rejoice, they were in 2A for the last couple of years, but they've won 36 out of their last 40, I think, against Class A competition. Their last Class A loss was to Cashin. It's been 3 or 4 years ago. So this is a really, really good team. And all you guys ganged up on me last week when I picked Hooker to win the state championship. So there's no way I'm picking against Fairview this week. Their season lasts another week. They survive. So I've got Fairview over Rejoice.
It's in Mark's best interest to pick Fairview as long as he's getting food up in the press box.
But Tom is usually worried about his own security when he goes to a visiting stadium, so he will not pick against the home team. So I'm picking against the home team. I mean, love you guys. I'm expecting some Mark Rogers bars when I get to the game, and I will fight my way out of there with those.
All right, Coach Mendenhall, he picked Fairview to win at Rejoice last week. You sticking with that?
I did. I mean, I'm sticking with it. I think Rejoice is amazing. I think this is the state championship game. And I mean that. I know Hooker's got some injuries. I think Bacola might get him this week even. It's going to be unbelievable games this week in that class. But I picked Fairview to go. Jax Bernard is, again, on top until you prove him wrong. I think he's a really, really special player, as good as all the other guys are. I think he's a step ahead until someone proves me wrong, and I'm going to roll with the Yellow Jackets again.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, it'll be a fun game. That'll be a fun game to watch. And, obviously, I guess Skordle sending the A team down there to call that. So Mark's going to fend them off with his bars, and Tom took the easy route out, didn't he, on that deal? So
next thing you know, Tom's going to be bringing a dog to the games. I mean, high maintenance.
He's got his personal security force with him. But it would be nice to go up there. I got kind of a connection on that because my Blanchard officiating crew's doing the game, so maybe they might be the ones that need security on the way out. I don't know, but this ought to be a good one. And Rejoice, I think, had a tremendous season. Probably the favorite in a lot of circles, but I'm kind of like Jay, the way Jay said, until somebody proves us wrong, or till somebody proves Bernard wrong in Fairview, you're going to have to knock them off before I go against them. I think they've proved it year after year, and I think they had a little stumble this year with Hooker, but I think you look at their body of work, and until somebody knocks them off, I'm not going to go against them. So I'm going with Fairview.
I'm betting all the green country media over there in the Tulsa area, they love Rejoice. They're probably all on the Rejoice bandwagon, and over on our side out here, we're on the Fairview bandwagon. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah, Jay mentioned Picola earlier. That was their first playoff win in 17 years. Really beat up on Tonkawa last week, but they have a 7-hour road trip to play at number 1 Hooker. So it's gonna be really interesting. Coach Craig, how would you handle a 7-hour bus trip for a playoff game with your team?
Man, obviously you need some luxury seating on that. First things first is to get you a good a bus ride up there that you can ride in comfort for sure. But I'm not used to 7-hour bus rides, nor are our kids. But obviously we're going to have to make a couple pit stops in there. on that. And I kind of talked to my Carl Albert buddies back in the past. When they make that trip to Guyman, that was always a fun trip. They're always headed out early, so get out early and maybe stop at Brahms and get you a Tom's burger over there and get prepped and ready for the game. But it's you definitely get out and get stretched before that. Gosh, I can't imagine.
It's a 2.5. It's a 2.5 bagger for trolley sour worms. That's kind of how you do the mileage on it too. Pharrell Gordon, who is my good friend Tracy Gordon's nephew, just got eligible last couple of weeks, and he transferred from Atascocita, which is one of the top programs in the state of Texas, for Pensacola. So he's an incredible pass rusher, 6'5", about 245 pounds. That will really help Pensacola in this run. So this Class A Division I is going to be, there's 5 really good teams in it, and Pensacola, Hooker, Fairview, and Rejoice. Those are 4 of them.
Man, I tell you what, how do you got to be doing some coaching to have a player like that drop into your lap 2 weeks before the end of the regular season?
They were just waiting to clear the move.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, let's talk about another long bus ride here. Class A Division II, Texoma Goodwell squaring off with Tallahena on Friday night. Texoma Goodwell left Velma Alma last week with a big 42-12 win, and Tallahena got its first playoff win since 2017 with a 30-20 defeat of Barnsdall. And again, like I mentioned before, guys, really the story of this game is maybe the 7.5-hour ride from Texoma to Tallahena. So it'll be interesting to see how coaches handle that. We have several of those on this show, long bus trips. But Tom Nelson, we'll start with you. Texoma Goodwell at Tallahena.
Yeah, I think Hunter Shepard was crunching the numbers this week. This is the longest drive, 464 miles, 7+ hours. Tallahena's district was a dogfight. It came down to points with Tallahena, Region Prep, and Central Salisaw finishing with 1 loss each, and Tallahena won the points tiebreaker. Tallahena, they had some trouble putting away Barnsdall last week. They won by 10. Landon Griffith has had a great sophomore year, a dual threat quarterback. Great numbers, 2,100 passing yards and a touchdown to interception ratio of 24-0. Team high, 1,429 rushing yards, 17 more TDs rushing. Texoma's already made 1 long trip in the playoffs. They went to Velma Alma, which is a tough place to win, and they did that. 1 big 42-12. I really think the travel is going to catch up with Texoma, and Tallahena will have enough in the tank to hold off the Red Devils.
Mark?
Tom had some good stats there, so I'll give you some stats. The Texoma bus will take 18 turns in 15 miles before Tallahena, and they will take 2 before that. So the bus driver, he's got it pretty easy for the first 7 hours, and then it gets tough. Cy Ammons is another player at Tallahena that's had a good year. He's got 1,000 yards receiving. This is a young team at Tallahena, and they've really struggled back and forth. They've had some good players. Have had to go to other places to play football since Tallahena hasn't had enough people to play. But I like Texoma. That I think that good enough to go get a big win at Velma last week. I think they get another win here. Class A in Western Oklahoma is really, really good, and Texoma's used to being on the school bus, so I think that they get a win here.
So do we go neutral sites after this?
Yeah, next round, yes.
Yeah.
Coach Mendenhall, Texoma Goodwell at Tallahena.
Yeah, Texoma proved me wrong. One of my misses last week, I thought Velma would get them. And so I'm going to, like Mark said, they play tough football out there. I trust their strength of schedule a little bit more than Tallahena's, and I'm going to not let them prove me wrong again. Well, I hope. I'm going to go with Texoma.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, probably one that's out of my wheelhouse on selections, but just from looking at what's happened during the season and the tough fight that Tallahena had in their district, I think they ended up winning that by 4 marginal points. I think was the difference in that. I think they had 75 and was Rejoice or whatever had, or whoever it was that was behind them had 71. So it was a tough fight in that. So there's always some good that comes out of being challenged and being tested. And Texoma had a big trip last week to Velma Alma. That was a big win for them. But another big road trip, kind of like Tom said, kind of hard to do that back to back. It kind of catches up with you. I know they're used to kind of traveling, but I look for Tallahena to pull this one out, and the Road Warriors are gonna finally find a way to break the bank, I guess, when you take another 7-hour trip. So Tallahena pulls this one off.
Saw a tweet this week going back to Picola at Hooker. This tweet was from Seth Adams, and he said 450 miles from Picola to Hooker. There are 12 U.S. states that Picola is closer to than it is Hooker. Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, Kansas, Mississippi, Nebraska, Iowa, Alabama, Missouri, Illinois, and Kentucky. Pretty great stat right there from Seth Adams. So if that's I haven't independently fact checked that. So if it's incorrect, Seth,
Can you verify Nebraska? Trying to figure that one out.
It could be closer. Hey, can you ask Seth if it is closer to Altered State where Jake is tonight watching the group washed out?
it's a whole other conversation there, Mark.
Okay. All right.
All right, let's move on to some 8-man football. The Dewar Dragons made quick work of Depew last week with a 60-0 win. The Dragons will host the Turpin Cardinals, who they themselves have a long bus ride. Turpin 9-1 on the season, defeated Waurika 52-6 a week ago. Tom Nelson, we'll start with you. Turpin at Dewar.
And this could be really, really good. I like Turpin. They've been very impressive in a tough district, beat Garber, hammered Pond Creek Hunter, and lost to Laverne by 4. Throwing a 38-point win over a good Tyrone team that Mark has ranked in the top 10 in Class C. But they've got a long drive, 336 miles, 5 hours to play a really, really, really good Dewar squad. The Dragons have been dominant and haven't given up more than a touchdown since the middle of September. I really want to pick Turpin, but Josh Bean's kids are at home, and I think they're going to defend their turf. I'm going to take Dewar in this one.
Mark.
Depew accomplished something that I think only Blackwell has done before. They had the Maroons were in a 3-team district with Alva and Guyman. And so there was a 3-way tie, and somebody had to go to the playoffs with 1 win. And Depew did. They finished 1-10 on the year. So they were in a 5-team district. 4 teams make the playoffs. This is a tough game to pick. I'm going to go with Dewar. I picked Dewar to win the state championship. Turpin is good enough to win the state championship. And so this Class B Division I is really good. So I expect it to be a good game. I wouldn't be surprised to see Turpin win. They got beat last year, I believe, at Drumright in the playoffs. So, but I think this one could go either way, but I'm going to go with the Dragons.
We have about 4 really good 8-man games to discuss tonight. And I usually refer to Tom as our 8-man expert. He has some help tonight with Coach Mendenhall. So looking forward to getting some good insight from Jay here. Jay, Turpin at Dewar.
Yeah, my insight is those 2 teams absolutely obliterated us when we played them. I mean, they're good. Dewar in the scrimmage, man, they got size, strength. They're fast, well coached, play fast. And Turpin, like you said, they almost beat Laverne, who I've got winning the whole thing. And Dewar getting a runner up, but I did mention last week my I guess dark horse pick is this game. Turpin could beat them, and I remember the kid's name, number 34 for Turpin's a great running back, well coached. You can kind of watch, as when you coach against guys, you kind of see them sizing you up and seeing what you're giving them, and their coach does a great job of taking what you give them. It's really hard because we were a little bit, we were not great this year. A little young, so it's kind of hard to see when you get late in the game how good those teams really are. So I'm basing some of that off of the eye test and what I saw against other teams. But I'm going to go ahead and go with Dewar since I picked them. But man, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Turpin pulls this one out.
I got to say, Adam and I a few weeks ago coming back from Hooker, we drove by that Turpin football stadium as their fans were leaving after that Laverne game, and you could tell they were hurting, and that was a huge game that night. But those just kind of sharpen the steel a little bit too. So
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they play the best teams I think B1's the best district for sure, and they went toe to toe with everybody. And like you said, they beat a really good Garber team pretty handily.
Let's go to our other 8-man expert, Coach Craig.
Yeah, I'm loaded on this. I do have the experience I have on that is I've taken a few defeats to Dewar, and I've had a few victories against Dewar in my day. So got a little history with the Dewar Dragons on that. But, Coach Bean's done a really good job with them, and they've really been contenders for a while now. And I'm kind of like everybody else. You look at their body of work for both teams, and both. It's really kind of hard to pick a winner out of this, because either one of these two teams could win, and either one of these two teams could probably contend for the title as well. But kind of being an old Okmulgee County guy, and the Dewar in my backyard, I'm going to stick with Dewar as a home favorite on that, and probably just because they're at home, giving them the advantage on that. If they were playing at Turpin, we'd probably take Turpin, but at Dewar, I'm going to take Dewar.
All right, let's go to Class B Division II. The Okeen Whippets defeated the Alex Longhorns 56-26 to advance to the quarterfinals this week. Okeen will face a really tough test this week as they travel to take on the Wilson Tigers in Henrietta. Wilson 9-1 this season. Its only loss coming at Walika back in September. Tom Nelson.
I got a story here. Years ago, when I was working in radio, we would put our first week playoff schedule together. I'd always ask to chase the lower seeded Enid area team over East, because I knew that I'd get a chance to call an upset. I remember two trips in particular to Weber's Falls that resulted in big wins for DCLA and Timberlake. I see the same thing here. Okeen has been a dominant team. They're only lost to number one Sealing and convincing wins over teams that are still playing this week in Waukomis and Shattuck. On the other hand, Wilson ran roughshod over a district that got blown out in the first round by teams in the Enid area. I just think the 8-man football is better in Northwest Oklahoma. I think Okeen's going to prove that by getting the road win.
Mark.
Well, Tom, those weren't upsets. I mean, when you were calling those games, they were just lower seeded teams.
Yep.
I don't know about this. I'm picking Okeen, but the Shelburne brothers are awesome. Watch them make that run through the state basketball tournament last year. They are incredible athletes. And this Wilson team is, I think, better than a typical 8-man team from the east side of the state. They're virtually a neighbor of Dewar. So we know that Dewar can make runs through the tournament. But I think this is going to be a really good game. I think Okeen is maybe a little bit the better team. Wilson's only loss is to Walika. And I think if Walika was competing in the upper division of B this year, they would have a great chance to win it. So this is going to be a great game. I'm going to go with Okeen, but I think it's going to be close. Coach
Minenel.
Yeah, you guys both make really good points. It's hard to compare, again, because I do believe Wilson has some great athletes. They put, I think they put 26 or 30 points on Walika, who I have, picked to win B2. And, Walika obviously beat Dewar this year. So that is the game that I kind of look at that. It's you get a couple athletes, you're going to score. I see it being a pretty high scoring game. I do think Okeen's going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was, 60-50 type deal, because both these teams can play. But yeah, I'm going with Okeen.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, I always growing up on an east side and being kind of the east side guy, and playing the west side teams, it was always kind of that was always kind of the case. There was just always the west side guys always were kind of a little bit tougher, I always thought, back in those days, especially in those lower classifications. And it was always kind of tough to go against them. They were just kind of tough. Wilson, like Mark said, you got some good athletes on that team. You got some good players. Okeen's got a history. They know how to win. One tough loss, but I'm going to kind of go against the trend with everybody else, kind of going with Okeen. I'm going to kind of stick with Wilson on this one and go with the home. What most would say, kind of maybe the home upset, but that game could go either way. Jay's probably got it right. It's probably a high scoring game, but I'm gonna get Wilson eking this one out with a victory and kind of go against the trend.
All right, two more games to pick here. That go to Garber. Garber Wolverines defeated Empire on the road 36-8 last week, and now get to face the undefeated Yale Bulldogs. Yale beat up on Savannah 46-0 last week and will host this quarterfinal game with Garber on Friday. Tom Nelson, Garber at Yale.
Yale's having their best season since the Chris Ellerick days 20 years ago. They haven't been touched this season. Only game that went the distance was a 28-0 win over Davenport. Yale's best players are all underclassmen. The quarterback, Caden Teeters, a sophomore, 1,200-yard rusher, Braden Hodgins, a junior. They got a junior, Tanner Moore, has got 10 interceptions, the defensive side of the ball. On the other hand, Garber is loaded with seniors on their last playoff run. Quarterback Brett Howery is over 6,000 career passing yards. Last couple of years, 28 touchdown passes and just 2 picks. Garber's played the tougher schedule. They've hammered the second best team in Yale's district, 54-0 back in September. That same Drumright team that lost to Pioneer, 2-8 Pioneer the week before that Garber loss. I'm going to go with Garber to go on the road and earn the W this week.
Mark.
Man, Tom just stole all my thunder. I mean, I dug deep tonight to get Braden Hodgett's name. He's run for 200 yards in 8 straight games, or 100 yards in 8 straight games, or he's had 2 touchdowns in 8 straight games. I'm sorry, I'll get that right. So Yale's good. They're undefeated. I want to give a shout out to Cooper Hughes at Garber, who was a neighborhood jam pancake blocker. We got some neighborhood jam coming his way, $50 gift certificate for pancake and a bunch of Pond Creek Hunter guys earlier in the season. It was such violent blocking that people on Facebook took exception to the fact that they thought it was bullying. So he really deserves credit on that. Yale beat Garber last year in the playoffs. I know this is a young team. They lost 4 games a year ago. They're undefeated this year. This is the toughest game to pick, but I'm going to go with Yale at home.
We need to get Jay some neighborhood jam for the way that he used to pancake block John Hardaway back in the day. Wish we still had some videos of that.
He beat up on John in practice?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. All the time. Mainly basketball.
Neighborhood jam. We'll send it. I mean, Jay, you're going to have to drive. You're going to have to get up really early to get into neighborhood jam. I mean, there's a line that starts about 7 o'clock. So
all right.
You're going to have to leave Enid at 5.
All right.
We'll have a whole nother show on Jay versus John Hardaway stories, but those are pretty good. Garber at Yale, Coach Mendenhall.
And this is a tough one. It really is. We played Yale last year, and they had a nose guard that was really good. I think he graduated, but they played us really tough, and we were pretty good last year. And I kind of followed them through because I kind of kept up with that, and their run in the playoffs was pretty good. And this year I haven't seen them on film, and I've been wondering some of the stuff you guys said stats wise, kind of what was their makeup. All I could do was compare scores, and I really came close to picking them, but I'm going to go with Garber. I got to stick true. I think B1 is really tough. And what Tom mentioned about the 12 seniors that Garber has, and I know, like we talked about, Carson Bishop's out, but, they still got his cousin Mark and, Howery, and, that linebacker's really good, also runs at Blazer. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think Howery played in the game last year against Yale because he got hurt in the second half of the season. Yeah. So I think that's a difference maker.
Yeah, Seth Smith for Garber. You guys mentioned Cooper Hughes. Weibling's an awesome lineman as well. And, Domingo those guys are really good athletes, and they're seniors. And as I watched that game against Empire last week, it was just pretty obvious to tell that they were not going to lose. They were going to decide. It was close early, and they just decided that wasn't going to be their last time to ever play together. And I think that's going to get them through in this game as well. I think it's going to be kind of tight. It's not going to be running up and down all over Yale. It's going to be a fist fight, but I'm going to go with Garber.
Yeah, they need to try to establish the run and not rely on Howery throwing it all night. They've got to try to establish the run and have to beat Yale. So
I agree. I think they can do it.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, I'm going to rely on a lot of the stats and knowledge that everybody else has kind of thrown up there, because really my knowledge of Garber and Yale is my dad was born in Garber, and my roommate in college was from Yale. So that's about the closest contact I've got to both of those. But from listening to what Jay said, with 12 seniors on that team, and there's got to be something said about that. And those guys come together at that time of the year when you're threatened with playing your last game and you've got that many seniors on a Class B team, then that's, there's something to be said for that. And the fact that they can, from what it sounds like, get after you up front. And that bodes well this time of the year. I'll attest to that from last week. So I'm going to have to I'm going to have to go. I think I'm going to go with Garber on that. I was really having a hard time with that because Yale's had 7 shutouts. So obviously they play some good defense, and defense is big this time of the year, but so is that offensive line, and so is being able to cram the ball down somebody's throat. And so from what Jay said, it sounds like Garber can get after you up front. So I'm gonna pick Garber, but like we've said before, wouldn't be surprised if Yale won that one. But I'll go with Garber with a small upset.
I got to give a shout out to Yale because last week I found out something that I didn't know before, that a guy named Chet Baker is from Yale, who is a jazz musician, and he is called the Prince of Cool. And apparently a jazz historian named Dave Gelly called him James Dean, Sinatra, and Bix rolled into one. So if they can summon a little bit of Chet Baker's coolness, they can persevere against the Wolverines this week.
Hard to believe the Prince of Cool comes from Yale, Oklahoma.
It's a true story. Jim Thorpe, Chet Baker. That's as good of a tandem as any school has in the state. I don't know who Morris would pair with Jeff, but that's pretty good.
We don't have anybody that cool.
All right, guys, it's time for our last pick'em game tonight. Covington Douglas undefeated, 11-0 after a 56-0 win over Wesleyan Christian last week. Wildcats will host the 7-3 Shattuck Indians on Friday. Shattuck moved on to the second round after a 44-20 win at Wetumpka last week. Tom Nelson.
No, let me go first. I got a stat. I know Tom's got the same stat, I'm sure. Ford Smith, we've talked about him a lot. He is a great player. He threw his first interception of the season last week in that game against Wesleyan Christian. He's thrown 30 touchdown passes. Last week was his first interception, but he's one of the very best players in this class. This is all Cov Doug. They get the win here, and then they go on to fight for this state championship in this really loaded class with O'Keen, Wilson, and Walika. This is really, really good group. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, you took it, but that's fine. I got a little more on it, so yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
Cov Doug hasn't won 2 playoff games since 2010 when they lost to Shattuck in the semis. As a matter of fact, Shattuck has ended Cov Doug's season in the playoffs 3 times in school history. The only 3 times these teams have met. Ford Smith, threw the first interception last week, went over 2,000 yards pass, 14 touchdowns on the ground. It is Covington Douglas's best season since they started 12-0 back in 2005, and they lost to Shattuck in the semis. Now, the history would say Shattuck, but I'm living in the present, and I think if Jake were here, he'd have Covington Douglas favored for a reason, and I think they're going to get their first win ever over the Indians on Friday night. Cov Doug.
Jay.
Yeah, I picked Cub Doug as even a dark horse. I think they could get ceiling in the semis. Even I think it's gonna be a heck of a game. And you could say I'm looking forward. Yes, I am. I think they're gonna beat Shattuck this week. Super well coached. Shattuck's is great, obviously as always. I think it's gonna be a good game for sure. But I tipped my hand a little bit last week when I said that. I think both these teams are really well coached, but I'm gonna go with Cub Doug.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, I agree with everybody on that. I think it's Covington Douglas' year. Shattuck's been as Tom said, has kind of had their number for years, but I think this is the year to break that streak, and I think Cov Doug moves on, and can't wait for that semifinal matchup.
Those are our 9 Skordle pick'em games. Adam, are all those schools streaming this week? Do you know? Okay, Adam's giving me the thumbs up. So you can find all those games for free, Skordle.tv, the Skordle app, or the individual school websites. So we're going to quickly discuss 6A1 down, and our panelists can give us a game that they're watching, or maybe an upset special, or a good storyline that they're following. So just briefly, Mark Rogers, we'll start with you, 6A1.
Norman Edmonds is going to be a really good game on this side of the state, but this is still wide open. You got Union and Jinx. This is the earliest they've played in the playoffs in a long time. I think there's only been 1 year in the last 28 that Union or Jinx hasn't been in the state championship game. So whoever survives this game is going to have to make a run. I can't wait to see what happens. This is going to be a fun class to watch.
Tom.
Yeah, the Norman Edmond game jumps out at me as well. Norman's had a heck of a season. Getting another backyard brawl in week 2 of the playoffs. At the top of the bracket, Bixby and Owasso, I think they'll they'll cruise. But interesting stuff in 6A1. Looking forward to some matchups next week.
Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, I might defer to these guys and Coach Craig a little bit more, but I did pick Jinx as a dark horse. That's a tough Union game to be playing in round 2. So that's the one I'm keeping an eye on this week.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, I think Owasso's they've kind of stood out with the big victories that they've had all through the year. Having some connections there at Owasso. I kind of root for them with some family ties there, but I know their size and their ability to push people around kind of puts them as a front runner. But it'll be interesting to see who comes out of that Norman Edmond guy. That's Norman's having quite the year and a lot of success after some struggles. But Edmond Memorial has a really good quarterback and Norman's quarterback's playing really, really well right now. That'll be a fun game to watch, and we'll see who comes out of that. But and the backyard brawl, you can't ever beat those for playoff times.
Hey, we do have to give a shout out. One of the show's favorite coaches, Justin Jones, over at Norman North, got a big playoff win over Moore last week, 30-19. Also, I believe it was Coach Jones' birthday this week as well. So good luck to Norman North this week. Let's move on to Class 6A2. Mark.
We're waiting for next week. This is a 3-team class, and to me, Sand Springs is good, but they're not in the 3 that is Muskogee, Stillwater, and Choctaw.
Tom.
One thing that kind of jumps out at me is you've got week 2 of the playoffs. You've got these teams that didn't play last week, and that may give the underdog just a little bit of an advantage. But I'm not seeing it in 6A2, though. I think it's going to be chalk. I think it's going to be Choctaw, Sand Springs, Muskogee, and Stillwater, all the teams that had the byes. But you wouldn't be surprised if somebody who played last week gets on a roll and pulls off an upset.
Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, the only one I thought of, Tom, was maybe Piedmont gets Sand Springs this week. But I'm with you. It's Muskogee and Choctaw are my picks.
Coach.
Yeah, I think Jay's right on that. That week off stinks, like Tom said. Sometimes you have a hard time getting going after that week's off, but I think Muskogee and probably Choctaw are head and shoulders above everybody else, and I don't think that week's going to bother them. Might help them actually, but it wouldn't be surprising to see one of those other teams kind of step up and make some noise early in the game and before the other two kind of get rolling. But once they get going again, I don't think there's anybody that's really going to stop. And it's going to be hard to shut down Muskogee. I think they're the favorite right now.
Class 5A, Carl Albert, Mark.
Yeah, Carl Albert. Carl Albert's going to be in the finals. We'll see who they play against, whether it's Booker T or possibly Newcastle. Booker T has got 2 great defensive linemen, Joseph Groves and Dwayne Jones. Came up with some big defensive stops last week when Collinsville, who was a tough first-round opponent, had a chance to go score and maybe beat them on their home field. So I don't know, Jeff, is this the best Carl Albert team ever? I mean, these last 2 years, maybe the best 2-year run with overall talent they've ever had.
Man, I can't think of, I know we had some runs, in the years that I was there for a couple of years, and then they ran off after I left. So obviously I didn't have a lot to do with that, but their talent level right now is just head and shoulders above everybody else. I see it being hard to stop them. What a great semifinal game though, the Carl Albert Dale City matchup in the semis. I mean, that might be the finals matchup really on that when you think about it.
Tom.
I'm impressed with Booker T. I think that win last week over Collinsville, it's always good to get a blowout in the first round, but I tell you what, a close game like that in the first round can sharpen that steel a little bit on down the road. Newcastle's been on a run. I think it's going to be Booker T and Newcastle next week on one side and CA and Del City on the other. And of course, I like Coach just said, I think your senior state championship game next week in the semis with CA and Del City, but they'll play it out. But it's going to be a good weekend of football. I got 4 good games here, I think. At least 2 good games.
Dell City, 19 points is the closest that Carl Albert has had in the last 2 years. That was the Dell City game 2 years ago. So, I mean, I think that's the test. Can anybody stay within 3 touchdowns?
Coach Mendenhall, let's go 5A.
Yeah, I mean, I said it last week. I think that Dell City, Carl Albert, and you guys mentioned Booker T. That's going to be really interesting. I do need to give a shout out, Claremore head coach Jarrett Hurt, just a great man. His mom passed a few weeks ago, and I was super proud to see him get a win over McAllister last week. But I'm actually named after his dad, Jay Hurt, who's in the Hall of Fame, coach over on the East Side a bunch. So I know it's going to be a tall task against Carl Albert, but good luck, Jarrett, this week.
All right, let's go to 4A. And Coach Craig, we'll start with you. You're the 4A guy, so let's give us what you watched for this week.
Yeah. Well, good luck, huh? On all of this, on all of these picks. That's you talk about a stacked deck, especially on that on that side of the bracket that we were on. Gosh almighty, you got with Clinton knocking us off, and you got Wagner over there, and you got Elgin over there, and no disrespect to the other teams, but I think those guys are just head and shoulders above everybody else right now. Wagner is just Wagner, and they just continue doing what they do. It'll be interesting to see how this Clinton matchup comes out. And then I think Tuttle's the odds-on favorite on that side of the bracket over there. So, boy, I tell you, I think it's Tuttle, and then flip a coin on the other side over there to see who makes it. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's Tuttle and Elgin. But Wagner has a big history, and they have a lot to say about that. And they always find a way to that championship game, even when they lost to Cushing, big a couple years ago. I mean, they turn around and win that game in the championship game. So don't ever count them out. So I know Elgin's loaded, and they've got a lot of weapons, and they're pretty dang good. But you've got a lot of pride and a lot of tradition there at Wagner.
Coach Craig, I know we have some coaches on the show, and they're not comfortable giving a gold ball pick when their team's not in it. But and so you can tell me to go jump in a lake, but I'll ask you who your thoughts on who holds the gold ball at the end of this on 4A.
Man, being next door and Coach Ballard and I are pretty good friends. I shocked Mark. We shocked Mark. We're all playing golf tournament together, and Mark didn't expect to see us in a golf cart together riding around playing golf. But we don't mind getting after it on the field, but off the field we're pretty close, and I'm happy for him being in that spot. They're going to give a lot of people trouble. They've got a lot of weapons, and on quarterback and 2 receivers. The McAdoo kid's a freak, and Elgin's got them too. And then Wagner. I mean, you don't ever count the Charbonneau kid out. So, man, I'm having a hard time on picking somebody out of that. I think any of those 3 teams can win it, and I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those guys come away with it. And I don't know that I can really pick one. I don't know that I can tell you who I would say is the odds-on favorite. I just think they're all 3 are that close together that they could play 10 times and it would be 5-5. So I'm not really sure, Andy, if I can pick one.
I was going to yield all my time to Jeff for him to make a pick, but since he didn't, I'm going to say it's going to come down to Tuttle's skill against Elgin's interior. I mean, Elgin's got an advantage up front. Tuttle's got an advantage at the skill positions. It could go either way. It's tough to make a pick. I don't blame you.
Mark, you're not making a pick either?
I made my pick last week.
Last week,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. My bad. Tom Nelson's going to you 4A.
Yeah, I believe I picked Elgin last week, and I think it's going to be Elgin Tuttle, and I'm going to throw Ada in there just because it's business. Elgin and Ada, I sold them game time, so I like both those, and they're still playing. I love Blanchard as well; they have game time too. So, but I think that the Wagner Elgin matchup next week, I think will be a really good one, and but I'm going to go with Elgin Tuttle in the final. So.
Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, that was my pick with, last week, Blanchard being my dark horse. And that just shows you how deep this class is. I mean, that was, to me, the hardest class to figure out and still is, just hearing you guys talk that know what you're actually talking about. But I did pick Elgin for my cousins, Leighton and Bentley. So I'm going to roll with the Owls still.
All right, let's move on to Class 3A. Mark Rogers.
Oh man, first round went exactly like what I think the final is going to be. It was Lincoln scoring early and often against Jay, and then Sulphur scoring early and often against Kingfisher. These two teams are on a collision course, and as we all know, there's a subtext here, which is private school, public school, and when they face off in the finals, it is going to be on. So I can't wait to see that game. I think we're going to have it.
Tom.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Heritage Hall, Holland Hall this week. But you're right, it's just like Mark said. I'm trying to remember who I picked last week in this one. I know I had Sulphur and Lincoln Christian in the final. I think I went Lincoln.
You're on Lincoln. I was the only guy on Sulphur, so
that's right. So yeah, I think I was on Lincoln Christian, but yeah, it's going to be fun. But I think it will be cool to have if we can get to that championship game and have public versus private for the gold ball. So.
Hey, big win for public school Shakota over Cassia Hall last week. That's a good upset for Shakota. But Coach Mendenhall, let's go to you, Class 3A.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Lincoln, but Mark got me on the Sulphur train a little bit. I've been paying attention a little bit more, so I'm going to stay with them. Man, they laid the wood to Kingfisher, so I can't wait to watch that game if that's what it ends up being in the finals.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, I think everybody's right. Mark's on it. They're on a collision course, and it'll be the epicenter of the public-private deal if that happens. And there's a lot of motivation on both parts. Both schools are really good. Both teams are really, really good. I know Coach Cole said, talking to him before the season that, they really felt like they had a chance this year. And I think they've proved that by the way they've played this year. I'm going to kind of err on the private school, on the public school side, just because I like the hard-nosed, tough style that Sulphur plays. They're just a hard-nosed football team, and I think that pays off. But man, it's going to, what a battle, what a game if it happens. That'd be fun to watch.
I do want to give credit and a shout out to my good friend Jonathan Grimmett's son John Grimmett, who caught a touchdown pass last week to beat Perkins. That was a great first round matchup between Pauls Valley and Perkins. And if you do comparative scores, Pauls Valley played Heritage Hall really close. Heritage Hall played Lincoln really close. I think Pauls Valley's got their work cut out for them to against Lincoln Christian, and I don't think they're going to win the game, but I think they'll go up there and try to stay competitive against Lincoln Christian. Southern Oklahoma in 3A this year is really good across the board. Some really good teams.
We already discussed Washington and Kiefer in 2A1, but three other really good matchups in that class. Mark?
I still think that, you're looking at Millwood, Marlowe, and Kingston is a great game. That one could go either way. So that's the best game in Class 2A. I think Marlowe, Kingston. Since Jake's not here, he's seeing Washed Out tonight, which is a band I never heard of before. I would go Marlowe, a 3-point favorite at Kingston. Game could go either way.
Tom?
I know Marlowe. I got to give Chisholm a shout out. They gave Marlowe a heck of a game last week. Chisholm's about 3 miles north of my house. So, but yeah, I think Millwood comes out of the one side of the bracket, and of course, Washington, I think, is going to win the darn thing. So,
Coach Mendenhall?
Yeah, same thing. Millwood, Washington, and I flipping my pick, flipping Washington.
Coach Craig?
Yeah, I'm not coming off the Washington train. It's kind of like what we were talking about with Fairview. Until somebody beats them, I'm not getting off of that train. So I think it's them. Now, who they play, I think that could be yet to be determined. I know Millwood's probably the favorite, but somebody else could trip them up and get in there. So not surprised if somebody else makes a run.
2A2, we talked about Beggs, Vian. Again, three really good matchups as well that we haven't discussed. Mark?
Yeah, I think these teams are all on the undefeated teams are on a collision course for the finals. And then Colcord and Holdenville, you got a 11-0 team against 10-1 team. So that's really good, but I'll give a slight nod to Holdenville there. But this should be a great semifinals.
Tom.
Yeah, like I said last week, all the undefeated teams in 2A2, which you would think would be tough to run the table because you figure they probably played some bigger 2A schools in the non-district. But those undefeated teams, I'm not going to come off what I thought last week, and that is I've got Vian winning the state championship. But yeah, you got some Stroud, Adair, I think Holdenville, and then Vian will win this week.
Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, last week I said Holdenville. I think can be a dark horse. I think they run a unique offense, and I think they're that's hard in the playoffs when you don't get to see that. I think when you play teams year after year in your district, and maybe they're trying to deal with it, they play a little bit closer. But when you get to the playoffs and no one's seen that, I think that makes it tougher. I think Concord's really good. We saw them obviously last year against Fairview too, and that's going to be the game I'm watching this week because I think it's going to be a great game.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, it's it's kind of crowded in that bracket also too, with some undefeated teams and some teams that can get there. And I still Stroud probably on the favorite side on that deal. Like Jay said, the Holdenville team's really, really good. So it ought to be an interesting run through that bracket to see who can make it.
A1, we've already talked about two of these matchups and really three because we talked quite a bit about Pacola Hooker. The other matchup there is Pawhuska versus Christian Heritage. So Mark Rogers, we'll start with you.
I'll go Pawhuska.
Tom?
Really quick, you mentioned, was it Jay? I think you mentioned the Hooker's got a bunch of injuries. Was that you said that?
I don't know if it's a bunch, but I had heard that their quarterback didn't look good on the video I saw last week. I don't know if he's back or, last year when they played Fairview in the finals, they brought in the backup quarterback, and I think that's the same kid. So if that's the case, it would change their offense a little bit.
Yeah, Cleet Martins, he had a really good game against Fairview, that game out in the Panhandle we did. He's the quarterback. Interesting. I still think I'm going to pick him over Bacola, Pawnee over Cashin, Pawhuska, and then Fairview. So we'll look some good matchups next week after all that. Wow.
Wait a minute. Tom just snuck in a pick.
You're right, I did, because I think I mentioned that I'd picked Fairview to win already. So
Adding.
Hopefully, all the Rejoice people had already turned the show off before that. So hopefully,
we've got Mark Rogers bars to hand out. They won't be upset with us
before they burn the car down on the way into the parking lot.
Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, I mean, I've already talked about the rest of the games, but I do think Pawhuska will beat Christian Heritage as well.
Coach Craig.
Yeah, if that's the case with the Hooker deal, kind of plays a role in all of that, or what's going to happen with all of that. But I still think they're going to be there, sticking with Fairview on that. But I like Pawhuska to win, and it'll be an interesting matchup to see those semifinal games, because there's going to be some really good matchups in that semifinal.
A2, one of the more interesting matchups here, Hominy at Thomas. That's a pretty big time matchup. Tom, let's start with you.
Yeah, I really think that there are some really good matchups here. We've talked about the Talahena-Texoma game, Thomas and Hominy. That's going to be a slobber knocker. Then Ringling and Regent Prep's good, and Woodland. I think they'll beat Kanawha pretty easily. I think I picked Woodland. Still liking that pick, but boy, I think you got three really good games this weekend.
Mark.
Well, there's no better tradition than their small town Oklahoma high school football than Thomas and Hominy. So this will be a really good game. Credit to Kanawha. They went on the road, long road trip to go to Mangum. They won last week. Mangum's got a really good team, great stadium in Mangum, WPA, that's built in the 30s. One of my favorite places to watch a game. But so Kanawha deserves some credit there. But I do like Woodland in the class. I'd like Hominy at Thomas, but it should be a close game.
Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, I'm also going with Hominy. I picked them to win the whole thing, or to be runner-up to Woodland. So I think that's going to happen. And I'm with Mark. I was surprised that Kanawha went down there and beat Mangum, but I think Woodland's too much. The Ringling Regent Prep game will be interesting. Regent can score on anybody, and they've proven that. And Ringling's always tough nosed, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
That really is. That's a clash of styles. I mean, you got Regent that runs that offense. Coach Bishop does a great job, and then Ringling runs the same offense that Coach Craig and I did. back in 1954, where it was just
Yeah.
there's one pass play. That's it. That's all, the only one.
Well, we play Regent. They still got John Mark Roller or whatever that quarterback's name is. I mean, they beat us out last year in the quarters, and we scored 50 points on them, and they scored 70. They scored every time they had the ball, and we weren't bad at defense. So it's tough. That kid is good. He's a solid D2 guy. Maybe I don't know. So that'll be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, they scored every time last year against you guys, but they wouldn't have punted even if they didn't.
That's right.
They go for it every time.
Yeah.
You talk about that is a crazy contrast in styles right there. Wow.
Yeah.
A2, Coach Craig.
Yeah, it'd be that'd be interesting to watch, because like you said, a clash of styles and which style comes through. Sounded like Regent, if they're not going to punt, it's hard to stop somebody on 4 downs. And so if they're moving the chains, they're going to probably score at some point in time. I know, Ringland playing hard-nosed stuff. As Mark said, the style we played back in the day, they might get their one pass in there somewhere, but it ought to be fun. Woodland, I think, is the favorites, so it'll be interesting to see how that match comes up with them, whoever makes it to the other side.
B1, we talked about a couple of these games, Garber, Yale, and also Turpin, Dewar. Tom, fill us in on the rest of the bracket.
Well, I've got 3 out of 4 from the West getting wins this week. Laverne, Garber, Hollis, and then Dewar's the lone East team I think will win. And so when you've got, you could have a really good one next week. Laverne against either Yale or Garber is going to be a heck of a semifinal. And then I think Dewar will do pretty well next week against Hollis or whoever they play. But I'm going to go Dewar Laverne in the championship game.
Mark.
Then let's say I think I picked Dewar if I remember right.
Can't be wrong if you're not sure on your pick. I think that this is a really good bracket. I mean, I think all these games are going to be fun to watch this weekend. I mean, Garber definitely is capable of winning that game and then winning again and winning more. But this is a good bracket with a bunch of good teams.
Coach Spinell.
Yeah, I think Hollis is going to probably get drum right, and Laverne's going to beat Caddo, and I got Laverne beating Dewar in the finals.
By the way, I did pick Laverne, so I picked Laverne last week, so I was wrong on that. Laverne's going to beat Dewar.
It's hard to pick against Felix Teal.
Yeah.
Those Cox out there, they do a great job.
Tom, we have that show on tape, so if we need to go back and review the film, we can do that.
Had to go back and find my notes from last week, but I found them, so yeah.
All right, Coach Craig.
That Laverne and I think it's Laverne and whoever, Yale Garber, obviously I'm having Tom moments. I don't remember if I picked Yale or Garber, but I think I picked Garber. But whoever comes out of that one, I think going to play either in the Dewar Turpin winner be in the finals. I just think that's the case. I picked Dewar, so I would say Dewar. Laverne's going to be hard to beat, but it'll be interesting to see who comes out of those semifinal matchups because there's 4 teams there that could scratch and make their way there. So it'll be a fun week to watch football.
All right, guys, 2 more classes. B2, Tom, start us off.
How about Cherokee? They pulled off a nice win last week, beating Copan. And as a reward, they get Sealing. That's going to be tough for them. I think Sealing will be Cherokee. We picked Covington Douglas over Shattuck. Wacomas has had a good year, but they've got to go to Waletka, and I think Waletka is going to win that one. And then O'Keene. So you got O'Keene, Wacomas, or O'Keene, Waletka on one side, and Cov Doug and Sealing on the other. And I think I picked. Let me see here. I picked Waletka. Yeah, I'll stay with Waletka on that. So.
Mark Rogers.
It's Waletka and Sealing on a collision course. I've got Waletka, but Sealing could easily win.
Jay.
Yeah, same. Waletka, and whoever wins Sealing, Cub Doug is who I got in the finals. And, obviously Cherokee, they've done a great job with what they have. Well coached out there, tough nose. They've been in our district the last couple of years, but I think Sealing's too much this week.
Coach Craig.
I think I'm going to agree with Mark on that. I think Sealing and Waletka are on a crash course, and I'm just impressed by what Waletka has been able to do this year. And so I'm going to give them the nod right now as the favorite on that. But I think those two are on a crash course.
All right, we've made it to our last class, Class C. Tom Nelson.
You look at this bracket and bottom left, hey, the Medford Fighting Cardinals. They've had a really nice season. Beat Bowlegs last week, 66-0. They've got Ryan this week. Ryan's really good. I think their Medford season will come to an end, but it's been a nice run up north of Enid, about 30 miles or so. Maysville Tyrone. I like Tyrone in that ball game. I'm not real familiar with Maysville, to be honest with you, over there. Haven't kept track of them too much. Tipton, top side of that bracket, they're tough to beat. But I picked Timberlake, playing for Thatcher. Everybody knows the story about Thatcher Severin, who's in the hospital with cancer, and his granddaddy is the head coach, and his dad is the assistant coach at Timberlake, and everybody's Thatcher strong, and I'm going to keep rolling with Timberlake. I think they're my pick to beat Tipton in the finals.
Well, it's going to be tough on that Texoma driver for the bus once he gets close to Tallahassee. It is not going to be tough on the bus driver for Ryan. He just needs to get on Highway 81 and then wait till he gets to Medford. So there's no turns on that trip. It's just straight shot. I think this one is three teams. It's Tipton and Ryan and Timberlake, but I think that Tipton's going to win again. They've got an incredible team, incredible program on a long run. Timberlake is their biggest threat, but I think I'm going to still go with Tipton.
One thing I'll say about Medford real quick is something else I'll say is before the proliferation of the new football stadiums and 8-man football with the turf and the flashing lights like Pond Creek Hunter has and such, Medford had one of the nicest stadiums in 8-man football, and still a good place to go play football. And I'm glad they're getting a big home playoff game.
We had a flood in Blackwell my senior year, and our cinder track was underwater. And so we had to drive to Medford to be able to run on their nice track that had, rubber tires and all that stuff on it too. So yeah, always great facilities there at Medford.
Worst thing about Medford,
shout out to Coach Turney.
The worst thing about Medford, though, is that the locker rooms are across State Highway 11. So they have to stop the traffic, and they got the semis and everything as the players come across the main highway there in Medford. So
no 3-lighted stoplights in Grant County, only a blinking red.
That's right. I'm trying to think if there's a blinking red anymore. Yeah, I don't know if there is.
Got to let the visiting team go across the highway.
Yeah, exactly.
Class C, Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, I said last week, I think I'm with Tom on that. Thatcher strong. I think, Tipton runs a very unique offense, especially in 8-man, to try to stop that. I think that Timberlake is the only team that can do that. Ryan is good. I've seen them on film and Medford. I think Ryan's going to win that game. And I'm also picking Tyrone. But in the end, I think it's Tipton and Timberlake, and I'm going to go with Thatcher and Timberlake.
Coach Craig finishes up.
I'm going to give my credit to Jay and follow his advice on this. I think Timberlake and Tipton are on a crash course. I do appreciate Mark's version of the Google Maps for everybody getting to Tallahassee or Medford. And I'm headed to Pitt, Kansas Thursday to watch Carly play some basketball. So can I get – it's pretty much a straight shot, right, Mark?
You're going to have to make a couple of turns up there. Just don't get lost in Frontenac where all the mobsters are.
Yeah. Go hit the chicken places in Pittsburgh as well. There's a couple of really good chicken places, Chicken Annie's and Chicken somebody else up there. I'm a Kansas.
I'll hit the chicken places and make a couple left turns. But I think Timberlake and Tipton are on a crash course. I think those two are the odds-on favorites. Not surprised if somebody else sneaks in there. Tyrone could sneak in there, but I think those two, and like I said, the Thatcher strong thing, and Timberlake's got a little bit of extra motivation to play, and so I kind of give the nod to Timberlake this year.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us on the Skordle Pay Dirt Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Knicks, and East Horse, and also the Tom Burger at Brahms. We need to have that renamed, so maybe Adam can talk to his contact there at Brahms and get that to be the Tom Burger, Tom Nelson Burger.
There you go.
Really appreciate Coach Mendenhall coming back on this week. Coach Craig, love having you on the show as always. Hopefully we can have you guys on here throughout the postseason. Be sure to tune into Skordle.tv or the Skordle app for all those matchups, those 9 matchups that we talked about at the beginning of the show. Good watch all the playoff teams in action this week. We'll be back next week with new guests.